Hello everyone, welcome to From Combat Boots to Business Suits, the podcast brought to you by the Officers Association Scotland. This is our pilot episode. It's actually quite a big thing, quite a big deal. My name is Jane Burns. I am going to be your host for this season, and my first guest on Combat Boots to Business Suits is the wonderful Mr. George Mackey. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege.
It's a real pleasure to have you. We have been kind of chatting back and forth for a couple of months, haven't we, about doing this? And I only told you today that you are the premiere episode of the series. How do you feel?
A little bit nervous, but yeah, hopefully I can do a good job.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I mean, there's a very specific reason why we've asked you to be the opening episode of the series. Obviously, this project came about because we were just so keen to share all of the sort of insights that we gain at the Officers Association from our clients, but in a different medium and in a way that just felt a little bit more personal. And so, of course, we're going to be exploring over the next 10 episodes all things transition out of the military. And when we were talking about how do we define those first steps, you've just signed off, now what? It was Heather that brought you up as an example of someone who, in her opinion, and she is the boss, had a really great transition journey. And you've also came up with an acronym, which our military, everyone loves a good acronym that kind of defines that sort of transition process for you. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Great.
So before we get into transition, if you just could give me a brief overview of your military career, take us right back to the start. What made you sign up and where did it take you?
Yeah, so I was in the Navy for just over 7 years. So joined when I was 22. Joined the Fleet Air Arm because I wanted to get into aviation. I've always loved jets, helicopters, etc. I was in Portsmouth at university at the time. Obviously a big naval town. Went to a really cool lecture on kind of search and rescue where there was helicopters, and asked the lecturer at the end how I get into that job, and he said, not with this degree, join the Navy. So literally on the walk back from that lecture, walked past the Armed Forces Careers Office in Portsmouth, poked my head in and asked if I could fly a helicopter. And they said yes with us. They poached me away from the RAF. And then joined the Navy about a year later. Went through flying training, which took quite a few years, and then was in aviation, various holdovers in the Navy, and then I did a few jobs on the aircraft carrier towards the end. And then left in July 2024.
2024. Okay, I mean it's actually really cool. Like I think it almost sounds like every kind of like kid's dream of like I just want to fly a helicopter. So did you enjoy your career in the military?
I did, yeah. It was good. The camaraderie is brilliant. The Navy, see the world kind of thing was actually true in my case. So I was pretty lucky. And the day job I didn't appreciate at the time, but looking back now and being able to fly very expensive bits of kit like they were a toy, was good fun. Yeah. And it's not something you can kind of replicate outside of the military.
No, certainly not. I mean, I think that's quite common, isn't it? Like when you've had these experiences that are kind of almost completely unrelatable to civvies like myself, when you step away from it and realize that it's just not normal. It's not what people. You kind of it hits you how cool some of the things that you've done.
And you can often not notice if it's the first job you do leaving school or university. It's only when you leave that you realize that the military is a very different way of life.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. It's a way of life. It's not just a job. It's a full-time live and breathe it.
Yeah. So we've got to 2024, and as with most people, it was your time to sign off. What kind of made you realise now's the time for me?
So I was at a bit of a kind of a point in my military career where I either effectively signed on for a long return of service and was almost stuck to continue for a long full-term career in the Navy, or at the natural point to kind of decide if I want to do a job outside of the military, now is probably the best time in terms of personal life commitments. It was the best time to take that risk of leaving. And I'd started to look at the Navy in a way that when I first joined, I thought I'd be there for life. And after 5-6 years in, I realised that it wasn't going to be a lifelong thing for me. So took the jump, the leap at that point to see what I could do on the outside.
I mean, that is very honest, and it is a leap of faith, I can imagine, to go, do you know what else is for me out there? Okay, so you have signed off. You're now in resettlement.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into that, because that's kind of really, that's the bulk of why we have, you have, just for the viewers' knowledge, you have secured a job and are actually, you know, now working a civilian role. And at the end of the episode, you know, we'll get into what you're doing now. But of course, the reason that we're here with you today is to talk about that resettlement period and how that went. So before we get into your acronym, which is amazing, by the way, it's really, really brilliant, and I think it's going to be really helpful to all of our listeners and viewers. How was that first sort of week, say, where suddenly you're kind of having to imagine and make decisions on what a whole other career could look like? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?
No. No. So for me, it was a bit of I had to make the decision before I kind of passed a certain line. So I hadn't actually given it a massive amount of thought in terms of what I do. And I had ideas about what I'd like to, I thought I'd like to stay in kind of an aviation role. But I hadn't actually thought about it too much. I hadn't done that much research, which going back would be some advice I give myself, to do that kind of initial kind of look at what you would want to do or potentially be able to do. But otherwise, it was effectively from the moment I put my notice in, my chit in, then starting to kind of plan. I was slightly different, so I had a 2-year kind of period to sign off for return of service.
Okay.
So I had a bit longer, but the danger of that is that I had a long time and I thought I had loads of time to plan this, so I didn't hit the ground running. I was like, I've got 2 years, I've got loads of time, and probably misused my first year. I'd say I could have used it a lot better, and only really started properly thinking about resettlement when I got to the kind of 12-month point, and it became a bit more real.
Okay, so you got to the 12-month point, and that's actually quite a good point anyway for us to start this conversation, because a lot of people tend to have maybe a year or so. So actually, it puts you on quite a good timeline with a lot of our listeners. You hit that 12-month point, you go, oh my goodness, I've been twiddling my thumbs a wee bit here. What was the first thing that you kind of decided to tackle, or does that correlate with your acronym actually in terms of chronology?
It does, because when I got to that 12-month point, I was still pretty clueless. I'll be honest. I'd spoken to people in the military that had either also put their notice in and were maybe a few months ahead of me, or people that had put their notice in and taken it back out, etc., and kind of gone through that back and forth. So I had a bit of a starting point, but I didn't really have a clear understanding of kind of what process to follow, which is where the acronym kind of first started to.
Then let's get into it. Would you like just tell us what it is, and let's just kind of go through it bit by bit, and then we can always relate it back to your specific experience.
Sure. So it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's the acronym's O.N.W.A.R.D.S, which I thought ties in quite nicely to the whole changing career, changing life path significantly. So I can break it down.
Yeah, please, go for it.
The O is to own your network, to know what you've already got in terms of a network, and to use the network within the military as much as you can. The N is names. So for every one connection you make, try and make another 2 or 3 from the conversation you have with that person. The A is, the W, I get my words right, is willingness. So to step out of your comfort zone and do stuff that, previously within the kind of safety net of the military you might not have wanted to do or been willing to do before. A is 2, so it's appreciation and advice. So every person that you talk to from the military, outside the military, understand that they're giving their own time to help you out. So be thankful, and also offer your help in return, which might not be immediately helpful, but may in a couple of years' time be helpful when they might come back and try and talk to you to see where you've got to. But the advice bit's the kind of key bit in that. So that's if you're ever talking to someone, you might be talking to someone that may be able to give you a job somewhere. Ask for advice rather than an interview. So if you have just a chat with someone, it takes the pressure off of them, and it makes it a much more relaxed conversation. So ask for advice rather than for a job. The A is to use resources. So there's lots of stuff out there to help you. It's not just you on your own. You've got LinkedIn. There are various kind of CRM tools to help manage that network that you're building, because it does grow pretty quickly if you do things the right way. And to use the stuff that's out there. Use ChatGPT, AI, and stuff to help you kind of
we'll get into that. 'Cause
build
that's
things.
a big one.
And then the D is so to do what's right for you. It's quite easy to kind of get caught up in things, talk to lots of people about their various industries, and think the correct thing to do is to start to look into something that maybe you hadn't thought of before. But if you've got a rough idea of what you do want to do, or at least know what you don't want to do, you can save yourself a lot of time and other people a lot of time by not having needless conversations and things. So be genuine to yourself. And then the final one, S, is to sell yourself. And it's a thing that I think, I definitely struggle with. I think a lot of people in the military struggle with, is that owning your achievements and being able to talk yourself up and really make yourself something that people want to have in their companies.
To be honest, even the way that you kind of skimmed over your military career, the fact that you've like done really cool stuff with flying helicopters and stuff, you just skimmed over it in such a way that it literally relates back to that point. Because if it had been me that had done that, I would have been bigging that up like no end. I'd have been flying helicopters for, I don't know, the president or something. Like it would have, everyone would know everything. So that is completely relatable, and also well done for getting through that acronym. I would have been absolutely sweating.
I was like, don't forget, don't misspell onwards. It's your own word.
It's your own word. No, you did great. You did absolutely great. So we've got through the hard part. You've managed to kind of do the whole thing in a one-hour. But let's go back now. So let's kind of talk about each of those points, and if you can kind of relate it to your own resettlement journey, and kind of what maybe made it become obvious that's a good piece of advice to impart. So let's start with O.
So O, and it's not handy just because it's an O and onwards for Own Your Network, but it was the first thing that effectively talking to the OAS kind of gave me. So I thought I was starting from complete scratch. I was looking to leave the military and start a job on the outside, and thought, okay, I don't really know. I've got friends that are on the outside, but they might be working in industries that I'm not interested in or don't think I can get a job in. I felt like I was starting from nothing, from a completely blank slate. And I think it was the OAS that reminded me that, no, you're already in a massive family, effectively, in the military. There are people in the military that are also leaving the military, have friends outside the military that are already left the military that are still willing to help people that are leaving. So you have a massive group of people that are already there willing to help you. So you're not starting from scratch. You might not know the names yet, but by just having a few conversations, so many people can come out and be there to help you. And you don't need to, the great thing about leaving the military is that you don't need to be in the same branch, service. If someone knows you're ex-military and they're ex-military or they're in, they will be willing to help you. So know that it's there, and effectively know that you're not starting from scratch. And you've got you're very lucky already to have that many people there.
I actually love what you just said there about being lucky, because I think, transition from a career in the military, it is a very difficult thing, and I would never downplay that in any way, shape or form. We see it with our clients all the time. However, you do kind of have that magic support network that most civilians don't have. Even, can you imagine, if you put yourself in the shoes of someone that's maybe worked at a bank for 5 years or something, they leave out the door. It's not like they can just contact someone that had just randomly worked for another bank, and gone, I used to work for Lloyd's, you work for Santander, do you want to chat? Like, it just doesn't work like that. Whereas you do have this family of shared experience, camaraderie, and yes, certainly people are very forthcoming with help. You're doing the same now. You're kind of bringing it around full circle to help others. So that's great.
It's huge, and every industry I've looked at has a ex-military kind of support group within. So if you're looking for people to talk to, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm pretty sure that if you were to go to that company and find someone that was ex-military, they would be more than happy to help you out. And I found that everywhere I tried. And as exactly you say, it's quite touching. But yeah, make the most of that, because we're lucky to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there anyone in particular, without maybe even without naming names, but was there anyone in particular that kind of helped point you in specific directions? Because you'd said obviously you didn't know necessarily what you wanted to do. Was there anything that through speaking to some people that kind of sparked some ideas?
Yeah, so it's hard to name names because I think I literally spoke to 400 people.
Yeah.
But the mentors that the O.A.S gave me, I don't know if I should plug names or not.
That's entirely up to you. Like,
but Stu Curry, is one of the mentors that I got through the O.A.S. And just having those really open, honest chats where he had no agenda. He didn't want me to go and work for the company that he worked for necessarily. He just wanted me to talk about the things that interest me, the things that I'd done before. And then he was able to effectively, from a separate point, kind of guide me a little bit and where I could use the experience I've already got to get a job sooner, but also kind of a bit of guidance on the areas that we did identify, the stuff that I might want to do, the people I might want to talk to help get me in that area.
So good.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's quite hard, and it's always easier, I've found, if you have advice, you know, I could give the same advice to someone else having the same issue as me, but giving that advice to yourself is sometimes a bit harder. You almost have to hear it from someone else before it becomes a bit more like valid.
Wait to see next time you're looking for a job, you'll be listening to your own podcast episode back.
Yeah, that's really handy. Yeah.
Taking your own
Even
advice.
if I'm the only one that views it, I'll be able to come back and see myself. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to next point.
Yeah, so names, and this was another, definitely came from the O.A.S to a degree, but it's, you'll go to events, you'll meet people, and if you see every one person that you meet, and set yourself a target to have 2 or 3 names from that person. So organising a coffee with them, or a Teams call or a Skype, and at the end of the phone call, or during the phone call, just ask if there's anyone else they know that you could talk to that would be helpful or that'd be willing to talk to you. You'll end up getting 2 or 3 names, and if you apply the same thing on from there, your web of people just grows and grows and grows, which is where the CRM tools in a later point come in, because if you do that and you always get 2 or 3 people from every conversation, very quickly you've got quite a big group of people that you've spoken to and that you might want to meet and talk to again. So yeah, just get names, and always ask if there's someone else that you can talk to that could be helpful. Yeah. And it will very quickly grow a big network for you. Yeah,
brilliant. Is there anything else, like from a personal standpoint on that, or would you just like to move on to the next one? That is quite self-explanatory, to be fair.
No, yeah, it's don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy to ask.
Yeah, because the thing that was kind of sitting in my head is there might be some people listening here that are maybe less. Well, I don't know. Actually, this is a question for you: is how easy do you find it to approach people and ask these questions? Because there'll be people listening, for example, who are a bit more extroverted that don't mind walking into a room and going, hi, can you help me? But there's also going to be a lot of people that the thought of doing that will just literally make them want to break out and sweat.
I am definitely more on the introvert side. So for me, it doesn't necessarily come naturally. Okay. I don't always think I'm like the big voice in the room, but yeah, it's knowing that, again, going back to the first point, people are there that want to help you. So when you're asking for more help or another person to talk to, you know, you're not asking for anything outrageous. Yeah. You're just asking for another person that could help you. But yeah, I'm definitely going to the first networking event that I did with the O.A.S this time last year. I was quite nervous. It was a different thing, and you don't know who you're going to talk to, who you're going to meet. But the second you have that first conversation and you realise everyone's in the same boat, or everyone's been in the same boat, immediately just opens up so much. And it's not hard. It's just having that first conversation when you get there, and just noticing that everyone's doing the same thing. Yeah. And it's not just you.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Exactly. Great. Okay, so we're on W.
Yeah, W. Yeah.
Even I'm trying to keep track of it.
So that's willingness to step out your comfort zone. So they all kind of blend a little bit, but you know, it'd be quite easy for some people and easy for me. You know, I could have told myself, you know, you're gonna get a job, something's gonna come to you. You know, the opportunity will just find you. But reality is, that is not the case.
Yeah.
You have to go out there and meet people and do things that you wouldn't normally do to get yourself out there and get your name around. So that is going to the events that, if you're more introverted, might not come naturally to you. Taking a long journey to get somewhere. It's all very worth it when you get there. But effectively, it's that kind of attitude of just saying yes to things.
Yeah.
The things that you could easily just be like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Just say yes, because I can guarantee every single time you do, when you leave that event or that thing or that conversation that you planned, you'll be so happy you did it.
Yes.
And that might be the thing that leads on to you getting a job. Because in my instance, and in many people that I've spoken to that have got jobs since leaving the military, they've got jobs or had a conversation that's led to a job in some of the most bizarre scenarios.
Yeah.
That have come from those random little meetings that they had, a coffee with someone. And if you don't get out and do that stuff and get out of your own kind of little bubble, that stuff will never come to you. Because
I think that's maybe one of the slight pitfalls or something to look out for with the previous points of like growing your network, is this assumption that perhaps, okay, I've spoken to this person on LinkedIn, or I've spoken to this person once at an event, they're just going to offer me a job. It doesn't work like that either. It's not a case of then sitting back and going, well, there's this big massive network, someone is just going to want to hire me and just arrange it all for me, if you like. It's still, you still have to put yourself out there, as you said, and say yes, and maybe say yes to that coffee, or something that you might not necessarily want to, or be proactive in your follow-up correspondence with people.
Yeah, it's exactly that, and it's as much as saying yes to things. It's not just saying yes. It's being the person to actually kind of initiate that that conversation, or say, again, do you want to have that coffee, etc. And not feeling like you're bothering people, because you're not. But to a degree, there has to be a little bit of selfishness in it. You have to ask people, because the worst they can say is no, I can't, I'm busy, etc.
Absolutely.
To things like that. But just if it feels a little bit uncomfortable for you, it depends what it is exactly. But it's probably a good sign that it's something that maybe you should
do. Yeah, absolutely.
And it will open so many doors, so it'll be worth it.
Good. All right, so A.
Mm-hmm.
I'm keeping track of it in my head. I'm trying to.
Thank God you are. Appreciation and advice, so a bit of a double hit. So appreciation is obviously understanding that people are taking their own time to talk to you, and it can be quite easy sometimes when you're in that kind of resettlement gap, or you might be on your extended kind of leave period, to forget that people have a normal 9-to-5 job, and they're squeezing you in either on their weekends or their evenings, or around a kind of busy work schedule they've got. So it goes without saying, just obviously be very thankful, show that appreciation for their time, and offer as much as you can. You might not feel like it at the time that you can give much in return, because you're looking for work on the outside, but that network will be there, for years and years to come. You'll have people on LinkedIn, and you never know what job you end up doing. That person might want to come to you for help in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they should know that they can do that same thing, because they've done it for you.
Yeah.
So offer that to them, and just be so thankful that they've actually taken the time to help you. And then the advice bit is, I found, and it was advice that I got from many people that I've spoken to, is ask for advice, not for a job.
Yeah.
So if you're having these kind of discussions with people, even though you might know that they're a senior person at a company, you might like the look of,
or even actively hiring, but it's one of those things. It's like just sitting people down. It's like, I just want a job out of you.
It becomes not very personal, and a bit more of a transaction between you and them. So just say, can I have some advice, and then have a bit more of a relaxed chat. If that person is someone that can give you a job and the chat goes well, it might lead to a job, or they might put you in touch with someone that can give you a job. But don't make that first interaction less or more stressful than it needs to be. For both of you. So always ask for advice, not for a job. Would be that one. But the appreciation bit as well. and everyone will find a job eventually. But remember who helped you when you get that job.
Yeah.
And make sure you go back and say thank you, because it's not a solo effort; it's a team effort when you actually get that job.
That's such a nice point, and it is important because I suppose I can imagine you're just so laser focused on that kind of almost sense of I have to find a job, you know, that urgency that suddenly when you do land that role, it can almost be like such a weight left off that you kind of almost like purge everything that's came before. And also one of the things I wanted to ask you is of course on appreciation and understanding people's timelines and that they're on 9 to 5. What would you say, or what did you find was an appropriate time frame? Let's just say you'd messaged someone on LinkedIn and asked for a chat. And they've maybe responded and gone, yeah, sure, I'll get back to you and let you know when I'm free. What's a sort of reasonable amount of time? Because without pestering the life out of someone, what's the sort of reasonable? Is it like a day, a couple of days, a week? When would you generally follow up with people if you hadn't had a response?
About 30. No, no. I think it's a difficult one to balance.
And also because with that LinkedIn thing of looking at someone's profile, you don't want them like 10 times a day to be like, George Mackey viewed your profile. You
don't want to become a pest.
Absolutely.
To people. But I think probably this is where the CRM tool, that's one of the points, comes in to help, because you can set reminders to when to try and contact someone again.
Then
but
let's hold it for...
I think probably about a week.
About a week, yeah.
But yes, it's a fine balance, and I think I was lucky enough never to have it, but you could probably get frustrated with people easily if you're thinking I'm asking and they're not actually coming to give me that opportunity. But you need to understand that people have got other things in the job going on, and it's not personal. They've just got taken away with other stuff in life. So just a friendly reminder. But then going back to that kind of that point there on, if you are messaging people on LinkedIn, for example, or emailing, take the extra time to make something a bit more personal. So don't just have a copy and paste kind of LinkedIn first message or a connection request or an email. Understand what company they work for, do a little bit of research into what that company does or what their job might be. So when you have that kind of initial contact, it's not just coming into their inbox as quite a generic, like, this person's not made any effort to make this personal. Because as soon as you do that, they're more likely to pick it up and respond to it.
Comes back to that thing of expecting someone else to do the work for you then, isn't it? It's like, hi, I'm here, therefore I'm owed something from you.
You have to put the work in, and it doesn't take long. It's another 30 seconds to a couple of minutes just to put a bit more personal touch into a message.
And did you ever send LinkedIn connection requests without a personal message?
No, I think I always did. Again, like, to save effort, it doesn't have to be War and Peace. It's the generic, like, hello, this is me, such and such, put me in touch with you. I hear you work for this company. I'd be really interested in this kind of role. If you have a spare half an hour to chat, I'd really appreciate it. Kind of
just because I can imagine when you're trying to grow your network, just literally going like connect. But of course, it's kind of nice to at least be like, even if it was just something as simple as, hey, I'm also ex-forces, about to go into resettlement. It'd be great to connect. I'm trying to expand my network or something. Just something as simple as that.
Yeah, that is exactly as you said. That is the immediate in for the ex-military network. As soon as you say, yes, I'm ex-forces or I'm about to leave, that will capture that person's attention, and they'll help you out. So that's the own your network kind of bit again. You might not know them yet, but they will most likely help you.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so R?
Yeah, so resources. So that's quite a nice segue into the kind of LinkedIn bit. So use it. It's all there. There's a reason why it's there. I think I downloaded LinkedIn basically at like the 12-month point.
Okay. So you were really just like that whole first year, just like...
I was like, people keep saying I should download it, so I'll download it, and got it, and probably sat with about 3 followers for 4 months or so, who are the other people in the Navy that were leaving at the same time as me, and then realised I should probably branch out a little bit, but use it, 'cause it's a massive thing, but also use it properly, because I know quite a few people, and I was probably doing it in my first couple of months as well, who would just try and connect with everyone and anyone on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But when that network grows pretty quickly and you start kind of narrowing down what it is you might want to do, you don't want to have your home screen just full of stuff that's not relevant to you, or miss the potential kind of job that's being put up because it's lost with everything else. So, how many people you're connected with doesn't actually mean much. It's the quality of those connections which is important. So bear that in mind. It's not a race to see how many you can get. It's having a good network on LinkedIn. The other tools, the CRM kind of tools, again, there's loads and loads out there.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that, actually, because that's not something that I've heard anyone else that I've spoken to. Because, believe it or not, guys, this is the first episode, but I haven't been recording them in chronological order. So I have actually had quite a few conversations before this one, with guests that are going to be subsequent episodes on the series, and no one's ever said about using a CRM system before. So I'm actually really curious, because that sounds like a brilliant idea to keep track of who people are, presumably when you connected with them, touch points that you've had with them.
Yeah. So I think it was I can't remember who, but one of the connections that I got, effectively an ex-military said, use it. You can get them for free, or you can pay more to have a slightly more fancy one. But
what system did you use specifically?
I think it's called CRX. I can't remember. It was a small amount every month, like £5 a month.
Oh, nice.
Compared to some that could be, I think they're used more commercially, generally speaking. But
well, normally a CRM system is used by businesses to keep track of contacts and even sales and opportunities and that sort of thing. But absolutely brilliant idea. What we'll do is, when you confirm the one that you can kind of have a look at what it is that you've used, we'll drop it in the description of this episode, so that if people want to use the same one, that they can.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it, but it's that AI bit again. So I kind of struggled for the first couple of months when I got my contact list from the Officers Association of all the people that I was interested to contact. I think there were about 30 names on there, which I had in an Excel spreadsheet, and most people in the military are used to just using Excel for everything. I thought that was okay, but as soon as you do that point for names, you have 30 conversations, get another 2 or 3 names, suddenly you've got 90 names.
Yeah.
And a little color-coded box on Excel is quite hard to know, and a little kind of comment bit. So getting that tool just takes the kind of legwork out of it, because you can have a reminder saying, you spoke to such and such 1 month ago. It might be worth putting a little check-in email, just to say, really appreciated that chat. You've got another chance for a chat, and kind of tracking like that. Closing things off if you had a really good chat, but it's not something you're interested in, you can just kind of turn it off.
Yeah, I absolutely love this, because you can't hold that all in your head, and anyone that's going into resettlement, and it's one of the things that Jo, when she does her workshops as well, is like, you kind of have to treat finding a job as a full-time job. So managing those contacts and being able to, perhaps, right, when you were talking about making things more personal, like when you come back from having had a coffee with someone, jotting down a couple of the things that they told you about themselves. So again, you're keeping it not just a transactional thing. You're kind of reminding yourself of who that person was. Yeah,
and I think that was so key, because that kind of comes into the appreciation bit again. But if someone tells you in a chat that it's their birthday in a few weeks' time, or that stuff about their family or things they're doing, or holiday they're going on, when you have that next call and they might have just come back from that holiday, if you start by saying, "Oh, how was such and such?"
Absolutely.
They're like, "Oh, this guy was actually kind of listening to me."
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got quite a friendly conversation, rather than that kind of transactional kind of what can I get out of you kind of thing.
Exactly. And because of course you're gonna, and that's also what you're saying about how remembering that people have lives and all the rest of it, is you going into the conversation hoping that they've remembered everything about you and what you want to do. So of course it's a two-way thing, and I really, really love what you said about closing things off as well, because again, it comes back to the point, one of the earlier points about it's almost finding out a little bit about what you don't want to do, and not wasting your time and the time of others. And sometimes, in fact more often than not, it's going to be that process of elimination, rather than suddenly going, this is it, this is the thing. Some people might get that light bulb moment, this is what I want to do, but for most people it's going to be a case of more working out what they don't want to do.
And that was very much the case for me. A process of elimination, which can take some time and a lot of conversations, but unless you have that conversation and look into it and can eliminate it, you might not know.
Yeah. So your CRM system, LinkedIn, is there any other resources that you felt were particular? Did you use, we kind of touched briefly on AI. What did you use in that sort of space?
So actually that was another, the AI kind of, and it sounds a bit false because I was saying how you should remember stuff about people, etc. But that CRM tool has the AI in it, so you could plug in things like birthdays then, etc. And when it sends you the reminder that you set for, talk to them again 2 weeks later, it will kind of hook onto those little bits that you put in the comment boxes.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
it would say, you could kind of generate a message to them as an automated thing saying, thanks again for the chat on the 10th, etc. Hope your birthday was nice on the 15th kind of thing. And again, it feels less personal, but it's just making your life easier.
It's a really
at that
efficient way of working. Let's be honest, and
Yeah.
it's the way the world's got. In the job market, like there's so much AI involved in the job market in general. It's one of the things that we, through all of our, well, there's actually, while we're recording this, Jo is actually in the other room doing a CV and interview workshop, and one of the things that she'll be talking about is getting your CV through an applicant tracking system. Did you come up against anything like that?
Yeah,
Yeah?
quite a lot. So it's funny seeing obviously that workshop going on because that was me literally 6 months ago. I went to everything I possibly could with the O.N.W.A.R.D.S. But yeah, you do definitely come up against all that stuff, which is where you have to kind of be careful with the AI stuff because it can capture stuff that's been done with AI. But as much as I say it wasn't personal, you should always read that message that it might have created for you and add a few little kind of humanisms into it because it can often come across quite robotic.
That's the balance with the AI, and it's one of the things that again we teach on our workshops is that AI is kind of like the efficiency tool, and certainly when it comes to CVs and things, and we'll get into that in sort of subsequent episodes anyway, the sort of really getting into ATS and stuff, so I won't have you get too much of a deep dive into that. But AI can kind of do a lot of the initial sort of legwork, if you like, point you in the right direction, but then you kind of, it's going back and humanizing what it's given you. So like that message, for example, just taking that message that does all the efficiencies of the information that you had on that person, but then kind of almost rewording it so that it's from George.
Yeah.
It's from Mac.
Yeah.
It's not from ChatGPT.
No, it's exactly as you said. It's finding a new job, especially after leaving the military, is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the classic saying of work smart, not hard. You're still gonna have to work hard.
Yeah.
But if you can make your life easier, why not?
Yeah.
And AI and tools like CRM and LinkedIn do that. So I think you'd be a fool not to use it. And no one's judging you because a lot of people are using it.
Did you use ChatGPT to help you with tailoring your CVs to different jobs that you were applying for?
Yeah, so I used it to a degree. So I'd run things through it, and if I ever got any kind of better worded sentences, etc., I'd probably take bits of it. And I think that's the thing. The advice I got from the O.N.W.A.R.D.S. from Joe was use it, but not exclusively that.
Yeah.
Kind of cherry pick the best bits from it, so you can kind of have a good mix.
Just for any listeners that are just starting their resettlement journey, where we recommend ChatGPT, for example, with getting you through an applicant tracking system. And if that is totally new to you and you're thinking, I don't even know what that is, please come along and sign up for one of Joe's workshops, because that is going to just demystify all of that. And we will also get into all of this in subsequent episodes on this podcast. However, if you're up against an applicant tracking system, what the ChatGPT does, and as you well know, is it will just help you hit those keywords that they're looking for, because your CV may be filtered out of the initial selection process if it doesn't include the keywords that were in the job description. So that's what we're talking about here within that context, just for someone, because this is episode 1, someone that's maybe never interacted with us in any way, shape or form might be going, what are they talking about? So again, that's just a case of working smarter and not harder, because it saves you from actually having to physically try and pick out all of the keywords and write it in yourself. It just means that you've covered your bases, and then you put your personal flair onto it. Yeah.
But use the resources that are there, because it can take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's a full-time job, so use help where it exists.
Are there any other resources before we move on that you can think of that you used?
In terms of tools, no, but there's all the military, ex-military networks out there, and there are loads more on LinkedIn that are there. So, join those groups, have those discussions, and again, it goes back to the first point of own your network. Like, do a bit of research on LinkedIn to find what's there, and off of LinkedIn, just literally Google like ex-forces, sites, etc., and find that kind of stuff that's out there.
Out of interest, just on resources, did you do any courses with your?
Nope.
No, none of that. Okay.
I'm still.
So you've still got a lot of credits.
I've still got the credits there.
Use.
I'm still trying to use them, but it depends on the person. Again, I was trying to work out what I wanted to do basically up until the very end, until I got a job. So I didn't want to put money into something and then change my mind, because I did change my mind. Another thing with our kind of the networking part is you talk to quite a lot of people that are very inspiring, and you can go from thinking you're going to do something one week, and that'll be you until you retire, and then you chat to someone the next week, and then suddenly you want to be a seahorse farmer or something like that. I don't know. It changes every week.
Looking up courses on seahorses.
Yeah, it changes a lot.
That's really funny. But also, again, really good advice, because, those credits are so precious.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they can be used long after you have a job, actually. So in some ways, unless you know you're going to put them to really good use, maybe sitting back and saving them is actually the more prudent thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so resources at D.
D, so that's do what's right for you. Again, so just be genuine. If you do know what you want to do and you're certain on that, then stick to that. Because you only have so much time before you get that final paycheck in the military. So you want to use that time wisely. And on the flip side, if you don't know what you want to do, you'll probably have a rough idea of at least what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But at least just be yourself. So when you have these conversations with people, and you say that, what things you enjoy doing, what things you've been successful at in the military and outside the military, then understand that, because you can waste a lot of time going down rabbit holes, knowing in the back of your head, I don't want to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Or trying to be someone that you're not. And it goes back to the kind of introvert-extrovert point. I think I probably found myself falling into the trap sometimes of thinking I've got to be that kind of typical officer kind of character.
Yeah.
And then probably come across as really disingenuous. And if you do get a job somewhere and it's the interview thing, if you're a completely different person in that interview and you get the job, you've then got to try and hold up that persona
that's
for
it.
the whole time
for life.
There. Exactly.
How many introverts have maybe done that? Just literally like for those 30 minutes or hour of the interview or whatever, just being like, I could be this person, and then they rock up on day one and they're like exhausted.
Exactly. Yeah. And often that's not what people are looking for.
No.
So again, just be yourself and just know what you want to do. And no one's going to be offended if you have that first chat with them, and they tell you how it is, and you thank them, and then just say, okay, thank you for the advice. You don't necessarily have to say, I'm not going to look at something else, but at least thank them and just kind of shut that door.
Yeah.
But don't, because I did it on lots of things. I thought, that sounds interesting. I'll have another chat, or I'll research it, or I'll look at what courses I could pay to do for that. Kind of in the back of my head, always thinking, it's not really for me. And all you're doing is wasting other people's time and your own time when you could be kind of focusing effort towards something that you kind of do know you want to do. So just constantly remind yourself when you're doing things like, is this what I want to do, or am I just kind of chasing things that I shouldn't be, and the desperation for a job? And that comes back to the kind of time thing. Like, it might seem really soon, and obviously people need to have a paycheck, but take a little bit more time. It's not as much of a panic as you think, and try and get into the right job. Otherwise, you'll just spend a couple of years bouncing around the wrong things until you find the right thing, which might be the path that you have to take anyway. But if you can nail it the first time, then that's probably better.
I think that's really important what you're saying. It's again being true and faithful to your own time and to the time of others. And it comes back to what you were saying about the resources and closing things off on the CRM. And maybe writing a couple of notes as to just particularly why you felt a little bit inclined to it, but also really realistically the reasons why it's not going to work for you. And it could be many things. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't give me that intrinsic feeling of purpose in the way that the military does, but it might just be that the salary brackets within that sector don't work for what your requirements are for your family, mortgage, whatever. Could be that you have to travel a bit more, and one of the reasons perhaps why you're leaving the military is that you want to be at home more.
Exactly.
There's so many factors that come in to why a certain career path might not be right for you, and it's not always just about, do I really want to do that or not? It's just, you have to think of why you're leaving, and that this is something that we get into, and that when I have conversations with veterans, and you're obviously not there yet, but that have been out 2, 3, 4 years, who have maybe done what you've said and they've got a job and then maybe bounced around a couple of other ones, is that they've kind of maybe done exactly what you mentioned, which was take a job out of this sense of urgency to have a job, and then realise that actually that doesn't align with the reasons why they signed off for the military anyway, and what they were hoping to achieve from their civilian life more broadly. So yeah, doing what's right for you, I think that's a really key part of all of this.
Yeah, exactly as you said there. I think I went down the rabbit hole again of looking at jobs because they looked exciting, but exactly as you said, like, just would have meant I was away from home even more, or traveling around all the time.
Which means you could have just stayed on your helicopter.
Exactly. Yeah. But properly thinking about it in the full kind of picture will help. Yeah, massively.
So, finally, S.
S. So
this is a big one.
This is a big one.
One
that I still struggle with to this day, but the sell yourself. And it's that classic military kind of trait to not want to brag, not want to boast, and to kind of be just a bit more modest about everything. Which I think in aspects is a good trait to have, but when you're on the job hunt and you're trying to sell yourself to people, you have to know your achievements and your strengths and be able to kind of articulate them properly. And it's a big thing within the military. In my first couple of interviews, still, where you've been asked achievements that you've had, and you always kind of say things from a kind of team perspective.
That collective.
we element, which I still struggle with today. But when you're on an interview, when you get to that point, and you've only got half an hour to an hour with someone you've never met before, you have to start kind of speaking in the kind of I, and being proud of the stuff that you have done, and not being afraid to kind of effectively be proud of it. But really imagining that you're the person that's employing, and thinking, what do I want to hear from this person?
What would you want to hear? Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I put you a little bit on the spot? Because you properly skimmed over your own military career. Could you, as you've described, selling yourself, sell to me, or tell me what one of your achievements that you're really proud of in the military was? And you're not allowed to use the word we.
Oh, blimey.
Sorry, this is so mean.
So I think, and I think probably going back to just the kind of the first commissioning and things like that, because I think that's a big kind of step. And I never really thought, obviously I wanted to fly, get into aviation, be in the military, but I never really thought much about the kind of training side, etc. But kind of getting that, finishing officer training or any training in the military and doing those courses. But I think it's quite easy to kind of underestimate that, and how much, because once you've finished that and you go away, you always think back to kind of basic training and stuff and think, oh, like that feels like a long distant memory and is nothing. But that's really highly valued on the outside.
Honestly, I can tell you, and I'm so sorry for doing that to you, because that was really unfair of me.
Again, you can see how much I was struggling.
Absolutely, definitely. And I'm not surprised, because talking about yourself, it's really, really hard, and something that most people anyway, not even just from a military background, would find particularly easy or comfortable to do. But I can tell you, as a civilian, I want to hear, like, I would love nothing more than for you right now to just tell me some wonderful ins and outs of what it's like to even be able to hold in your head how you fly a helicopter, never mind the feeling and the sensation of doing it. Because if you're sitting in that interview, you are able to give examples, for example, of to interview questions that you'll be asked that the people sitting on the other side of the panel, unless they're ex-military themselves, won't be able to, will have never heard before.
Yeah.
So you're also such an interesting candidate because you're bringing something completely new into the room.
Yeah.
And that's not about it even being the most exciting thing in the world, but it's just you're bringing a different perspective, a different viewpoint than probably any other candidate that they might have interviewed that day.
Yeah, and I think that's something you easily forget in the military, that it is, some of the stuff you do is very different. And it's, being able to tell those kind of stories and then apply them. So one that I applied in the interview processes that I was going through from the kind of the aviation training was into the kind of project world of, you kind of plan a mission or a sortie in very particular fine detail with like an execution plan and different stages, and then you actually go and kind of execute, do it, and then you come back and you kind of review and learn from it. And you can kind of effectively give that entire example without mentioning other stuff of actually kind of, being in the military.
Yeah.
But that passes over so easily into stuff that you do in jobs on the outside. But until you kind of have that other perspective of looking at it, you'll think, oh, there's no way I can kind of connect the job that I've been doing to this job on the outside. You'll be amazed how many crossovers there are with things. And so long as you can give that example and then tie it into the job you're looking at.
Yes.
I mean, use all those experiences that you've had in the military, because you'll be amazed how much they kind of lead into jobs on the outside. And
how much you've actually got to give and bring to the table. I hear so often, and we hear at the OAS, ex-military will kind of almost assume that going into, whether it's financial services or renewables or whatever, that just because they have no prior experience in that field, that number one, everyone that is either interviewing them or works for that company is an expert in that field. That's absolutely not true. Most people in every walk of life are just winging it, and doing the best that they can do, unless they really are a trained expert, and you'll know by the job that they're doing that is the case. And that also that everything runs well and efficiently, and that everyone knows what they're doing at all times. You, ex-military in particular, our clients, when you get to sort of that sort of officer rank and above, even just the organizational skills and the ways of looking at a problem, you're going to be of so much value, and that's worth selling as well. It's not about I've never done this before. It's like you're bringing skills to the table that are so well honed and crafted that might be missing from the business completely, and that's the thing they're going, we need this is what we're looking for. We're not looking for another replica of 10 employees that we already have. We're looking for something different, someone that can look outside the box, and if you can sell that then that person could be you.
And that leads perfectly into that sell yourself and kind of do what's right for you is, and I've been guilty of it in the last few months, of joining a job on the outside and then kind of forgetting that they probably hired me for the reasons exactly as you just mentioned there, and trying to be a different person in those first couple months, because I feel like I have to be, but then having to be reminded by people that I work with saying, no, we hired you because of this, so stop trying to be someone else. So in the entire networking journey, I think a lot of the onward stuff kind of ties into doing that first job as well. And another thing that I'm guilty of is, I'm completely honest, as you mentioned earlier on, when you kind of got that job, it's easy to kind of stop that kind of networking piece. And I'm really having to try and bring myself back into it. Not because I'm looking for another job necessarily, but because having that network there at all times, you never know what's going to happen. is a really strong thing, but also to constantly be the person that can offer advice to other people that are changing their job or also coming out. And
well, you're here now, and you're as well. You're kind of paying it back. Actually, at the time of recording, it's the 30th of January that we're recording this episode, and next week you're coming to speak at one of our employers events. So that it's just come so full circle. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's so if you told me a year ago when I went to the first O.S event that I'd be one of the people up there talking, I would not have believed it for a second. And I feel like an imposter now, kind of doing all this stuff. Because
honestly, you walked in to record the episode and you were like, I just don't know if this is going to be
who's going to listen
use.
to me? Yeah.
I feel like that even like doing this podcast and hosting it. I'm like, is this going to be of any use? But honestly, when I'm having these conversations and speaking with you today, I cannot thank you enough, because I think you could highly underestimate how much everything that you've said is going to resonate with so many different people. So just to kind of wrap up quickly, because we've been chatting for almost an hour now. Could you just let us know what your job is? Because you did obviously secure a job pretty quickly from when you started first interacting with the OES. What do you do now?
So my role is I'm a project delivery sponsor. So it's in the kind of project management sphere, which I know a lot of people leaving the military try and get into.
We'll need to get you back for season 2 to talk about project management. There we go.
Hopefully I've learned how to do it by then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so effectively I work for a company called KBR who work or contract people back into the MOD to help on infrastructure projects.
Okay.
So I'm working in that, but it's a great stepping stone. So I'm not in a specifically project management role right now, but I'm effectively having the opportunity to learn on the job and see all aspects of project management to probably do that full as the full thing down the line. But it's good, and for me personally, and it's another thing in the whole networking journey and the sell yourself thing, is understand what your skill set and experience is at that point of leaving the military. I mean, a lot of people want to get completely away from the military kind of environment, and that makes sense. But if you are struggling to find a job, realize what your most recent kind of skill set and ability is, and if you can use that as a stepping stone to do the thing that you might be thinking about, then do that, because use what you're good at initially and then learn to do the other thing whilst getting a paycheck. That's the other bit of advice I give.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now,
it's a pleasure.
I will end every episode with one particular question, and I didn't give you any inclination of what that question was before the episode, but obviously we are called from combat boots to business suits. And by the way, your lovely mug here is yours to keep forever and ever. So of course you're going to drink every single brew you're ever going to drink for the rest of your life from this exact mug. Yeah. And I will check. I will be that person.
I'll bring it to every
check
OS
your
event.
LinkedIn profile just to make sure that the mug's always there. But that is yours to keep as a thank you for joining us today. As you can see, we have on one hand combat boots, and we have business suits. Which of these do you feel the most affinity with?
Ooh, that's a good question. Still combat boots, and I think it will take a long time to get away from that, because the bulk of my working life has been in combat boots.
Yeah.
But it's remembering at times when you're in that first job that you might have doubts, etc., for leaving, but noticing the kind of grass is greener effect and reminding yourself why you left and what you're doing now, and that it's still a journey, and you might have to do something that doesn't feel like the perfect dream job initially, but it's all leading towards something else. But just remind yourself that, the military has got you there.
Yeah.
But there are reasons why you left, and just remind yourself that if you're having doubts. But I'm still...
I
still work a lot with the Navy, so I feel like I'm...
And you've also... You've not been long out either. No. So could you imagine if you were instantly like, business suits? That would... Listen, George, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been brilliant. And we actually made it through the acronym, and I think we spelled it correctly. If we didn't, please drop a comment below, but don't troll us, be kind. So thank you so much to everyone for listening. This has been the pilot episode of From Combat Boots to Business Suits. Thank you so much to George for joining me. If you have any specific questions on anything that we covered throughout the O.N.W.A.R.D. acronym or resettlement more widely, please drop a comment below on wherever you're listening and watching this podcast, and we will get back to you. Alternatively, if you are in Scotland and you're just beginning your resettlement journey, please sign up with us here at the Officers Association Scotland. We have a number of resources, workshops that can help you. George knows firsthand how good they are. And also, you can always come along to one of our fabulous events, and it's a great way to start to expand that network that you are, that may just get you your first job.
I got this job because of the OAS.
There we go. I love to hear that. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks' time for episode 2. Wherever you are watching, please be sure to share, like, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.